I often wonder what is the current and true definition of a sports car. I believe a true sports car is not about extreme performances, over-design, or extravagant and exotic shapes. A sports car should not be about figures and status. It must be fun to drive. A sports car is about adventures, creating memories and unforgettable experiences. In a sports car, design is ethics and passion. Engineering is honesty and hardworking. Production is experience and craftsmanship. A sports car must be lightweight, and the true driving enjoyment can only be analog. We believe luxury is time spent with a purpose. Freedom is driving without a destination. Adventure is seeking the less traffic roads. A sports car should be about the driver and tell the stories of his life. A little bit like a canvas where each of us can paint memories, fun and joy. A sports car should be timeless, rare, essential, sensory, undiluted and unconstrained. Morgan has always been all of these things, and every Morgan is meaningful, charming and different.
The car is one of the most complex objects that man has ever conceived, you know. It's fascinating, and there's so many things you can look at cars as mirrors of society, if you will. But maybe what interests me the most is the romantic idea of the car. You know, it's something that allows you to extend your body, to move through space, to see things, and to discover things. There's a huge amount of liberty that the car has given us as people, as societies, and that's the part that I find most interesting in car design. That sense of beauty and freedom that it traditionally is associated with.
You know, the design of a car is still most probably the most important reason for purchasing a car.
The cars snowballed from drawing farmscapes and the tractors in the farmscapes. And then we got the tractors out in isolation and figured out that we quite liked drawing vehicles. And my dad was a big car guy. We had cool cars around. And so I ended up drawing cars. And therein started the obsession.
You can call me crazy, but I believe a car is an object with soul. I don't really look at it as just a means of transport from A to B. You have taxis and you have buses that take care of that, and public transportation. But I really believe it's a person. So it can be an extension of yourself, or it could be someone who's complementary to you. But it's someone who you speak to. You have a kind of connection with.
For me, driving a car when you feel at one with it is a special thing. When you're on that bit of road that you love and you know well, and the car's talking to you, you're getting the sensation through all the contact points of the car, through the seat, through the steering, through the pedals, through the gear shift. I think people talk about flow state these days, and it's that kind of sensation that you get when you're just at one with the car.
Fundamentally, I think a sports car has to be engaging. It has to be approachable and enjoyable and provide you with just the right amount of adrenaline without being intimidating. That's a sports car.
Morgan was always a brand that stood out for doing things very differently. What always stood out to me was the uniqueness of its construction and the longevity of its design. So certain decisions made a very long time ago stood the test of time. And that aspect of timelessness very much appeals to me to this very day.
This is Morgan's latest flagship car. This is the Morgan Midsummer. It's entirely handmade, it weighs nearly 1,000 kilograms, and it's been made in collaboration with Pininfarina. It's a celebration of design, of craftsmanship, of coach building, and of a rich heritage of lightweight European sports cars. Morgan is a very small team, and we rely heavily on collaboration in everything we do with our suppliers and technology partners to develop the very best products that we're able to. Collaboration, by definition, is a two-way street. It's not about one brand taking over another brand. It's about working together and exchanging ideas in order to create something new and different, or to achieve something that was previously unachievable.
We're teaming up with some world-renowned manufacturers that have been carrying on that tradition of coach building for limited run and special edition vehicles. We're joining the almost standard CX type platform to a fully coach built and handmade body for a very limited number of clientele. So they'll get to experience coach building in all its detail and expertise and quality.
Traditionally, we've always had the louvers down the length of the bonnet, all the way front to rear across the bonnet. And we just stamp those in with a sort of metal press, press each one in. But I wonder if we could decorate those a bit more.
It could be interesting if that works together with also the wind deflector, because you don't want to get...
It was a collaboration in its truest sense, with Pininfarina given every opportunity to express themselves in every way they wanted to, but with our design team making sure that the Midsummer was a true Morgan.
The car is designed clearly for the Midsummer driving experiences. And today we're building the Midsummer at the foot of Midsummer Hill.
Of course, Pininfarina and Morgan, if we sum the years of experience, we're celebrating 200 years of coach building. So what better partner to collaborate with to reintroduce Fuori Serie as a label. So we were thrilled to hear of the opportunity.
Because this car was designed entirely in collaboration, it actually features, in addition to the Morgan badges on this axis, the Pininfarina badges on this axis. But it's not the usual Pininfarina badge. The badge says Pininfarina Fuori Serie.
I'm sure you probably know that Fuori Serie means off the line. And off the line is the typical way of working of coach builders, in particular Pininfarina, since its foundation. So Pinin at the time, Farina, was receiving rolling chassis that were intended to be designed around with a specific design. And this is somehow what happened with the Morgan project. We were immediately attracted by the possibility to use a trademark by Pininfarina, which is this badge named Pininfarina Fuori Serie, which has been registered years ago, but used only for concept cars. So it never went into regular production. So we all agreed that this project would be the right occasion, the first occasion for bringing into production the Pininfarina Fuori Serie badge.
Pininfarina is quintessentially timeless in its design and in its approach to when we create our cars. So while processes and technologies can change as we evolve, there's a certain underlying philosophy and a way we create our objects that remains the same throughout the years.
It's a combination of elegance, beauty and innovation, where innovation is very important in our DNA because it goes to technology, it goes to continuous search for new solutions from the technical standpoint that are combined with the design. The combination of these three elements, beauty, innovation and elegance, they do produce a design which is capable to last decades and, in a word, to be timeless.
So timeless is certainly something that is, of course, it has to be fresh and attractive at first glance when you first unveil and see a project and a product. But what makes it timeless is its shelf life, you know. So if you look at a cars after 10 years or 20 years or 30 years and so on and so forth, they still maintain a certain fresh aspect to it. And the way to get there is actually by really following a less is more kind of philosophy. So, you know, really playing with the beautiful volumes, well-balanced volumes, and keeping details at the minimal, because it's when you kind of overdo the details that you get into something which could be a bit too fashion focused and a bit less oriented towards the long term.
We play many roles. I think one key role that we play is the role of the catalyst. We're very good at absorbing many bits of information and then transforming it in a partially rational and in a partially intuitive way. And we can therefore give shape to things that are yet to come. So this is one element where we help create a vision of things to come.
Talking about the connection here between the tonneau.
It looks, at first glance, it looks a little unusual, but you know, when you think that this would actually fit a little bit.
A little over a year ago, Pininfarina came to visit us at Morgan Motor Company. There was no real intention for the day other than to get to know each other, and we had a fantastic day. Their design team and my design team spent the day walking around the factory. They were particularly fascinated to see the way that we as designers and engineers have a direct interface with the craftsmen and the coach builders in the factory buildings. They love how we could be inspired and influenced by the techniques of the craft that were being used and how that had a direct influence on the way we designed our cars. We then, of course, went driving. Morgan offers an incredibly eclectic mix of motoring experiences. Everyone is very analog, very engaging, and you feel very connected to the driving experience. And for the Pininfarina design team to witness that firsthand, they drove a +4, they drove a +6, and they drove our Super 3, which is almost a motorcycle. And all of the experiences had the same thing in common. Not only are they coach-built, handmade cars, but they celebrate all of the touch points and all of the interfaces. And I like to think this really excited the design team at Pininfarina. Perhaps almost inevitably, after we finished at the factory, conversation carried on in the local pub. And we all went out for dinner and conversation, and our conversations broadened. We started talking about architectural influences, fashion influences, the effect of aerodynamics, and we learned a little bit more about the way Pininfarina design and develop cars with the clients that they work with. Pininfarina then returned the favour, and we travelled to Turin, and we visited their studios in Cambiano, and we walked around their incredible museum and delved into their history books. In fact, they even opened the doors to their archive room, which is an incredible bunker full of every sketch and every idea that's been imagined on paper in the past by Pininfarina. And to walk through some of these drawings and see the journeys their designers had been on in the past with some of these projects was really interesting to us.
So the best place to start was, of course, Morgan and Pininfarina. So we looked at Morgan's history, their philosophy behind the cars that they've created throughout the years. And you can really see, you know, constant evolution in their design and their design language. So it's nothing to, you know, really go out there and scare people and scare the public, but really try and evolve and freshen and update what they've already got. It's a time-tested formula. It's something that works. And we wanted to really take that, you know, to the next level and present something, yes, new, quintessentially Pininfarina, done the Pininfarina way, but that's also instantly recognizable as a Morgan.
We decided that this project shouldn't be a modern homage or a modern sort of retrospective look at Morgan, but it should really celebrate the very best bits of the Morgan brand and of Pininfarina. And in general, the joy and excitement of the sort of mid-late century European sports car. The lightweight, open-topped, a pure Barchetta was the car that was coming to mind at the start because you're most connected to the environment in a car such as this. And that really was the starting point, the catalyst for deciding to celebrate the best of our brands while exaggerating all of these key values that Morgan still celebrate today.
So we try to get that feeling of movement into the vehicle, because it's obviously something that you want to make it look like it's moving even when it's standing still. But at the same time, you're not talking about a supercar or a hypercar, so you don't want to get that feeling like it's going at 350 km per hour all the time. So you want to get this feeling of movement, but with a little bit of grace in it. And hence the very delicate and calculated design of the main wings. So if you look at the front fender and the rear fender, there's a beautiful but structured flow running through them. And this, we feel, really helps to emphasize this sensation and feeling of movement and grace.
Morgan, when you think of the shape of a Morgan, I imagine many people think of the classic running board, that silhouette, the two-line silhouette we call it. Every Morgan is proportioned fairly similar, even a Super 3 to some extent. The A-pillar sits directly between the two wheels. You have a very sort of cab rearward proportion and a long bonnet, which makes for an amazing driving experience, that vista over the tops of the front wheels. You can see exactly where the front wheels are, which gives you an amazing confidence and excitement when steering the car through the corners. And that's something we knew we wanted to protect, that overall proportion. We thought there was an opportunity to potentially broaden our design opportunities for the future and introduce a third line to the Morgan silhouette. And by lifting up the drop door and painting in a shoulder line, and then instead of this line dropping quite suddenly off the back, by lifting up the rear tail and elongating the rear tail, we're able to juice this new line that flows through the top of the car and then drops off elegantly.
Sophistication is definitely something that you could say has been enhanced, yes. We have a longer rear overhang, which proportionally just elongates the whole car. We've got a higher shoulder line, slightly more fuller forms to the wings. The rolling radius is bigger. So all of these little tiny proportional tweaks, I think, actually make the car look bigger, even though the track and wheelbase are exactly the same. It's got a lot more presence.
I think the team and I are most pleased to see the effect of the overall proportion of the car, how it sits on its wheels. And that's a combination of the new treatment of the wing lines, of introducing that shoulder line, the elongated tail, but also the way the wheels and arches are talking to each other. The arches with the chamfers dropping around gives it a little bit more muscle. The wheels having larger rubber and filling the arches a bit more just means the car sits really well on its wheels. And when you see the car sat in the factory, that drama, that eccentric elegance, the way it sits, from a design point of view, I think the team and I that have worked on the project are most pleased with that.
Midsummer as a project is a collaboration for us to bring some traditional skills along with modern technology back together.
Everything you see on the car behind me is made entirely by hand. Hammers working over bags of sand and a wooden frame to help inform the shape, and the constraints that this process introduces inform the overall visual.
With Midsummer, every panel is aluminium, all the bodywork. Aluminium obviously is a great material for its lightness, but it's also a great material for how we can form it, and that's how we get these beautiful shapes and curves that can go through it.
Coachbuilding in its primitive form is almost taking sheet metal and turning it into a body of a vehicle, whereas modern cars are made with large-scale press tools and very detailed pieces of equipment that would make repetitive amounts of panels. Coachbuilding is the old craft of hand making and hand forming panels and parts to go onto cars. So using very much traditional craftsmanship, a high level of skill, high level of accuracy, that is then turned into what would commonly be known as an A-class or a surface panel on a car.
To me, coach building is all about the human aspect and the human touch in creating and realizing cars. So one thing is a production line, which can get you to perfection, but really cold perfection. And coach building is really that man-made feeling, that man-made artisanal point of view while creating and realizing certain objects.
There's something magical about coach building where you really get to tailor a car to a client's, a person's needs and ambitions. So in a certain sense, the automobile always mirrors man's desires, but a coach built car is really a person's canvas, if you will. So coach building is wonderful because it allows for this individual expression in the automotive sector.
We've actually touched every single A-surface panel on the car, so there isn't a single panel that you visually see that is a current Morgan part. Yeah, obviously the wings are a big change, and then any interfacing panel with those has been updated and tweaked with both our design team and the Pininfarina design team.
Yeah, the biggest difference between standard bonnet and the Midsummer bonnet was the unknown, I'd say. They are, I think, the longest bonnets we've ever made. You just have to be careful. You have to predict next steps to make sure you don't make any mistakes. It's quite difficult to explain because it happens quite naturally. I like to explore and discover things. So there's more measuring, there's more trying, double, triple trying. To make sure that all the shut lines, all the gaps are nice and even. I had to make sure it's right, because there was no coming back.
Something which we've always wanted to be able to do, and this project has afforded us the ability to be able to do that, is expose some of the woodwork that's inside the car. With Morgan, the ash frame that lives inside every Morgan is used as the tool in which the panels are handmade on top of. Whatever you do to the wood, the panels take on that form and shape. On the inside of the car, those panels are clad with leathers and fabrics and upholsteries to form the interior surfaces. And for us, we set ourselves the task of exposing some of this coachwork, some of this wooden coachwork in the final exterior of the car.
The ash frame is essentially the buck that the aluminium is formed onto. So it becomes part of that body, that framework of the body, the ash frame and the aluminium working together to form the shape and the beauty of the car.
It's no secret that at Morgan we use ash for our coach building of the wooden frame under the vehicle, but Pininfarina saw this and wanted to accentuate it and celebrate it in the exterior of the car. So using our own in-house cabinet makers, we were able to bring Teak onto the surface of the car, which was from the inspiration of the beautiful motor launches that you see in the Mediterranean.
Another thing which I feel is beautiful and really iconic to this car is really the level of wood trim that surrounds the cockpit. So that was something which we wanted to really emphasize and bring it, out into the open, because that's something which is probably not known to the wider public, is the amount of wood that's within the car. And we thought if we'd leave a bit of that exposed and really bring it out into the belt line behind the headrest and wrap it around then, into the side of the doors, that'll be something really iconic and also emphasize the way that, the Morgans are built.
Traditionally, Morgans are made of ash framework, which isn't visible. So for this car, we're using Teak as the visible part of the wood.
The Teak is built up in layers of veneer, which we call laminate, and so it is still a solid Teak, but it makes it far more robust and structural for the exterior of a vehicle. Each layer of Teak is 0.6 millimeters. So you can only imagine if it's 0.6 millimeter per layer of Teak, how many layers are needed to get to sometimes the 60 millimeters of Teak that we're actually using in areas of the Midsummer.
The door section of the car is made up of 72 leaves, which are bonded together and then shaped and then veneered again to give it the final look.
Another key part to using the Teak is how the grain actually runs around the car, and that can only be done by using these veneers, and that actually creates this beautiful framing effect where the interior and the exterior are separate, and as you walk past you can kind of see the interior of the car just being framed with this Teak surround.
The grain has to run around the car and look, I want it to look all symmetrical everywhere, so I've got to make sure I get all the cut lines in the right place. So yeah, the grain will follow and run around everywhere. So when you look from one side of the car to the other, it will look the same and sort of, yeah, match and be identical in that way.
It's that attention to detail that really ties everything together.
I think it's amazing. I think seeing the panels come into existence from certain cases from flat sheets of material and being turned into fully sculpted panels is just amazing. The skills and the tools and techniques that the guys bring to the fore to develop those panels is absolutely amazing. It's a joy to see, to be honest. The guys take so much pleasure in the work when they get to almost have a free hand to develop these things and to get on and make parts and really show off their skills. It's really good.
One of the things that was fascinating working with Pininfarina is the facilities that they have in the Cambiano studios. We designed this car, and this is a first for me, the first time we've not made a clay model for a vehicle that I've developed whilst working at Morgan. This car was designed entirely in a virtual environment. This was a really exciting fusion, a bit like the cars themselves that have a very, very modern BMW powertrain with a handmade coach-built body. The design process was a mixture of full digital 3D virtual realization, and then we're making the cars with aluminium and wood, and that contrast was really exciting. These VR suites enable us to look at not only the car in almost photorealistic environment, but it's a mixed reality environment. So we can have conversations with the designers around us, point out items on a car, just like you would with a full-size clay model. The real benefit of that is we can see several different iterations very, very quickly. This gave us a huge amount of confidence that the car would look right and feel right at the point where we started manufacturing the car.
Certainly in the visuals and in the virtual reality sessions, you get a good idea of what the car is going to look like. But looking at the real object over here, it definitely had a bit more of a wow factor than I would have expected. So everything seemed to be one up on my expectations, which is great. So really looking and touching the car for the first time as well. You know, seeing all the chrome trim on the rocker panel and the lower skirts. Looking at the warmth of the wood that surrounds the entire cabin over there. These are things, you know, with all your latest tools that you have at your disposal during the creation process, you don't see it, you don't perceive it, and when you actually see the real car, it's just another level of playing with your senses over there. So this was really a fantastic surprise.
There's nothing ostentatious about a Morgan. It's not a pretentious vehicle. It's a very approachable, very friendly vehicle, and it has an elegance to it, but it also has an undoubtable eccentricity to it. So we coined this term eccentric elegance. And we have this long dropping tail that drops off gently towards the rear of the car, which suggests a bit of grace, but also massively helps the aerodynamics. It's a very purposeful line. By lifting up that rear, we're able to control the air departing off the back of the car. And both the designers at Pininfarina and ourselves were drawing these silhouettes and these sketches in those first stages. The second thing we did is look at and analyse the flowing, inflicting wing line that is the front running board. And by lifting that volume up behind the front wheels, we're able to also really help the aerodynamics, but then it kicks towards the rear and adds a bit more structure and a bit more tension, makes the whole line feel still traditional, but a little bit more purposeful. The third layer of study into the body was to add some creases and some tension to the corners of the wings. So today we have quite a full-bodied form on the +4, which we love. It's the very iconic classic shape, but we wanted to create some departure between the +4 and the +6 bloodline and add a little bit more tension and structure to those lines. Around the base of the vehicle, we've decided to undercut and close off the body. The wings on a +6 today come down quite vertically and they look very lightweight because they are. They're aluminium suspended in space with a thin edge just giving them stiffness. But by closing these forms on the Midsummer, we've made the car appear to be a little bit more solid and have a little bit more strength to its overall volumes. For this car, we still use a 19-inch alloy wheel that we've used traditionally in the past on our larger capacity engine cars, but we've now opted for a much larger tyre wall profile. There's much more rubber around those wheels, making the overall rolling radius a lot larger, but also giving a really nice ballooned sidewall profile. We've also obsessed over the fit of those wheels in Y across the lateral axis of the vehicle to make sure they're right at the extent of filling the arches. And with the chamfer on the rear wings and the front wings, you get this really nice relationship of the arch flowing down into the wheels, and that makes this car sit with such purpose that I've not really seen before at Morgan, and for me that is a real benefit to the overall impression of this car and the impact it makes when driving past you. The CX chassis is an aluminium bonded and riveted structure. It has a 3-litre BMW straight 6 engine. It produces about 335 brake horsepower. But the key thing for us is, when we place and handcraft this body on top, we kept a real eye on the overall weight of the vehicle. We aim for this car to be as close to 1,000 kilograms on the road as we can possibly take it.
One of the targets with the project with Pininfarina is to create a dynamic car and to save weight is a big aspect of that. So obviously removing the windscreen, removing the wipers, removing the hood and the side screens, that was a big weight save. So that was for free almost. And then below the surface, this is where it starts getting a little bit tricky. The lovely wheel that you see looks heavy, but the engineering aspect behind it, there's a lot of material that we've taken out. So this is a forged wheel, but then we've machined all these details to take weight out of the wheel. So this wheel is actually just over 3 kilograms lighter than our current 19-inch wheel.
I really think that the tools and skills that are used should grab people's attention. The partnership of materials, of aluminium, of wood and of leather is traditionally what Morgan's all about, and I think this is just a really good showcase of that again in what is a very premium product.
Well, it makes me proud that, you know, I've done it, I did that, and hopefully the customer will be happy. It's a good feeling to be part of it.
But of course, a project like this only really comes to life when you see the cars in build. I get so excited when you see a vehicle that you've been working on driving down the road in the opposite direction. And we're so excited for the experiences and adventures that our customers are going to have driving this car. I'm personally very excited to see them being built in the factory at Malvern by hand and handcrafted, and that brings so much excitement to everybody that visits the factory and comes to see what we do.